Eleanor Williams sat in the back of the yellow school bus, her math textbook open on her lap. While other kids chatted loudly about weekend plans, 12-year-old Eleanor was busy solving algebra problems meant for high school students. Her teacher had given her extra work because she finished the regular assignments too quickly. "You have a special gift with numbers," her father often told her. John Williams worked as an accountant in their Atlanta neighborhood, and from the time Eleanor could count, he had shared his love of mathematics with her. Eleanor grew up in a modest two-story house on Maple Street. Her mother, Diane, taught economics at the community college and filled their home with books about business and finance. The Williams family wasn't rich, but they valued education above everything else. "Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you," her mother would say. At the dining table each month, Eleanor helped her father balance the family budget. By age 15, she was helping him with his clients' books too. The local business owners were surprised to see a teenager understanding complex financial statements, but Eleanor saw numbers as a fascinating puzzle. "That girl is going places," Mr. Johnson, the hardware store owner, said after watching Eleanor spot an error in his tax calculations that had stumped even his regular accountant. In high school, Eleanor faced her first real challenges. She was often the only black student in advanced math and business classes. Some teachers seemed surprised by her intelligence, and some classmates made hurtful comments. "Don't you worry about them," her grandmother told her. "They're just scared because you're smarter than they are." Eleanor kept her head high and her grades higher. When college application time came, she received scholarship offers from several universities. She chose Howard University, a historically black college with a strong business program. College life opened a new world for Eleanor. For the first time, she was surrounded by other bright black students who shared her ambitions. She double-majored in finance and business administration, joining the investment club and staying up late discussing economic theories with her roommates. During her junior year, Eleanor landed a competitive internship at Atlantic Investment Group. On her first day, a security guard stopped her in the lobby. "Deliveries go through the back entrance," he said, looking at her dark skin rather than her professional attire. Eleanor calmly showed him her company ID. "I'm the new financial analyst intern," she said, her voice steady despite the burning in her chest. This wasn't the last time she would be underestimated, but Eleanor used each incident as fuel for her determination. After graduating with honors, Eleanor accepted a full-time position at Atlantic. While other new employees socialized after work, she stayed late analyzing market trends and developing investment strategies. Her boss, Mr. Phillips, noticed her dedication. "Williams, that report you prepared on emerging markets was impressive," he told her one evening. "Keep this up, and you'll be managing your own team before you know it." He was right. By 28, Eleanor was the youngest portfolio manager in the company's history. By 32, she was directing international investments and handling the accounts of several millionaire clients. But something was missing. Each night, Eleanor returned to her expensive apartment and thought about her father's words. "Money is just a tool. What matters is how you use it to build something that lasts." Eleanor began to dream of creating something meaningful, a financial institution that would serve people like her parents and neighbors, who often struggled to get fair treatment from traditional banks. She started researching, planning, and saving. Little did she know that her greatest challenge, an opportunity, was just around the corner. Eleanor Williams sat in her office on the 34th floor, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. At 35 years old, she had achieved what many would call success. Her corner office at Atlantic Investment Group came with a six-figure salary and respect from her colleagues. But Eleanor knew something was missing. Every Sunday, when she visited her parents for dinner, she heard stories about their neighbors. Mrs. Taylor couldn't get a loan to fix her roof. Mr. Washington's small business was struggling because the bank charged him higher interest rates than white business owners. "The system isn't built for us," her father said one evening, shaking his head. Eleanor couldn't sleep that night. By morning, an idea had taken root in her mind. What if she created a bank that treated everyone fairly, a bank that would serve communities that big banks ignored? For the next 6 months, Eleanor worked her regular job during the day and developed her business plan at night. She studied struggling banks, banking regulations, and community needs. Her apartment walls were covered with charts and maps showing neighborhoods without proper banking services. You look tired, her boss commented one morning. Big project keeping you up? Eleanor smiled. Just planning for the future. 2 weeks later, she learned about Westside Community Bank, a small local bank that was failing. The owner wanted to sell quickly. Eleanor saw her chance. She called a meeting with 5 other black professionals she had met through her work: a lawyer, an accountant, a marketing expert, and 2 other investment managers. In her living room, she shared her vision. "This is crazy," said Marcus, the lawyer. "None of us has run a bank before. But we all know what it's like to be treated unfairly by banks," Eleanor replied. "That's our advantage." By the end of the night, all 5 had agreed to invest. Combined with her own savings and a loan from a venture capital firm impressed by her business plan, Eleanor had enough to make an offer for Westside Community Bank. The purchase was not easy. The bank regulators questioned whether Eleanor's team had enough experience. The current bank employees worried about their jobs. Some clients threatened to leave when they heard about the new ownership. On the day the sale was finalized, Eleanor's mother handed her a small wooden plaque. It read, "Heritage Community Bank, banking for all." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. "This is what you're building, a heritage for our community," her mother said. Eleanor renamed the bank that same day. The first year was hard. Eleanor worked 18-hour days, personally meeting with clients who wanted to leave and convincing them to stay. She hired financial education specialists to offer free classes on budgeting, saving, and building credit. She approved loans for small businesses that other banks had rejected, but made sure they had support to succeed. Slowly, things began to change. Word spread through the community. New customers arrived every day. The bank's deposits grew. After 2 years, Heritage Community Bank opened its second branch in another underserved neighborhood. By the 5th year, Heritage had 6 branches across 3 states. Financial magazines started writing about the Heritage model of community banking. Eleanor was invited to speak at banking conferences, though she often sent other team members instead. She preferred working directly with clients and communities. "Success isn't about how many branches we open," she told her staff. "It's about how many lives we change." What Eleanor didn't know was that her own life was about to change too. A simple visit to another bank would soon create a situation that would test everything she stood for and bring unexpected opportunities for even greater impact. Tuesday mornings were usually quiet at First National Bank. The downtown branch opened at 9:00 a.m., and the rush of office workers typically didn't start until lunchtime. James Sullivan, a teller with 3 years' experience, sipped his coffee and straightened his tie as the first few customers trickled in. Outside, rain poured down on the city streets. The weather forecast had predicted sunshine, leaving many people caught without umbrellas. Among them was Eleanor Williams. Eleanor hadn't planned to visit First National that morning. She had started her day at a construction site where Heritage Community Bank was building its newest branch. Wearing jeans, work boots, and a simple blue blouse, she had walked the site with the contractors, reviewing plans and discussing timelines. As she was leaving, her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer. The sale of an investment property she owned had just closed. The buyer had delivered a check to her lawyer's office, and Eleanor could pick it up right away. Perfect timing, Eleanor thought. The property sale would fund new small business loans at Heritage. She drove to her lawyer's office, picked up the check, and then realized she was only 2 blocks from First National Bank. Eleanor maintained a personal account at First National for convenience. Though it was a competitor to Heritage, she believed in knowing how other banks operated. She also kept some of her personal finances separate from her business. As rain began to fall, Eleanor decided to make a quick stop. She parked her car, pulled her jacket over her head, and ran through the downpour to the bank's entrance. Water dripped from her curly hair as she stepped inside. James Sullivan looked up as the door chimed. He saw a black woman in casual clothes, her shoes leaving wet marks on the polished floor. She wasn't dressed like their typical customers, who usually wore business attire. "Good morning," Eleanor said, approaching his window. "I'd like to deposit this check, please." James took the check and his eyes widened. The amount was substantial, nearly $1 million. He looked at Eleanor, then back at the check. Bank policy required manager verification for deposits over $10,000. "One moment, please," he said, rising from his seat. I need to get my manager to approve this. Eleanor nodded. She understood banking protocols well. She checked her phone while waiting, reviewing emails from her team about a new financial literacy program Heritage was launching in schools. James hurried to the office of Richard Hartwell, the branch manager. Hartwell had worked at First National for 20 years and was known for his strict adherence to rules. "Sir," James said, "I have a customer with a large check for deposit. Policy requires your approval." Hartwell looked up from his computer. "How much?" When James told him the amount, Hartwell frowned. "Who's the customer?" "A woman. She's not a regular. At least I don't recognize her. She's dressed very casually." Hartwell stood up. "I'll handle this." He walked to the teller window, where Eleanor was still waiting patiently. His eyes took in her casual appearance, the rainwater still dripping from her jacket, and the expensive check on the counter. "Good morning," he said, his voice professional but cool. "I'm Richard Hartwell, the branch manager. I understand you wish to deposit this check." Eleanor extended her hand. "Yes, I'm Eleanor Williams. I have an account here." Hartwell shook her hand briefly, then picked up the check, examining it carefully. Several other customers had entered the bank now, forming a line behind Eleanor. They watched with curiosity as the manager scrutinized the check with unusual attention. What should have been a routine transaction was about to become something much more significant. Neither Eleanor nor Hartwell knew that this rainy Tuesday morning would change both of their lives forever. Richard Hartwell held Eleanor's check between his fingers like it might be fake. His eyes moved from the check to Eleanor's face, then back to the check again. The other customers in line shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. "Ms. Williams," he said, his voice louder than necessary, "there seems to be an issue with this check." Eleanor kept her expression calm, though her heart beat faster. She had faced this kind of treatment before. "What's the issue, Mr. Hartwell?" "This is a very large amount," he said. "We need to verify that this check is legitimate." Eleanor nodded. "I understand. What do you need from me?" Hartwell's eyes narrowed slightly. He had expected her to get upset or leave. Most people trying to deposit fake checks would give up when questioned. "I'll need to see multiple forms of ID," he said, "and we'll need to contact the issuing bank to confirm the funds are available." "That's fine," Eleanor replied, opening her purse. She took out her driver's license and passport, placing them on the counter. Hartwell examined her IDs closely, comparing the photos to her face multiple times. The line behind Eleanor grew longer. A few customers decided to leave, planning to return later. "I'll also need to know the source of these funds," Hartwell said, his tone becoming more challenging. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "It's from the sale of a property I owned. My lawyer delivered the check this morning." "Do you have proof of this property sale?" Hartwell asked immediately. A black woman in line behind Eleanor sighed loudly. An older man shook his head. They recognized what was happening, but said nothing. Eleanor kept her voice level. "Mr. Hartwell, is this your standard procedure for all check deposits, or just mine?" Hartwell's face flushed slightly. "We have protocols for large deposits, Ms. Williams. I'm simply following bank policy." "I see," Eleanor said. "And what is your specific concern about my check?" By now, James Sullivan, the teller, was looking uncomfortable. He had worked at First National long enough to know that Hartwell was going beyond normal verification processes. "Ma'am," Hartwell said, his voice taking on a condescending tone, "we have many cases of fraud these days. When someone comes in," he paused, looking at her casual clothes, "dressed like this, with a check of this size, we need to be careful." The bank had grown quiet. Even the two other tellers had stopped their transactions to watch. Eleanor straightened her back. She was used to being underestimated, but she never accepted being disrespected. "Mr. Hartwell, I've been a customer at this bank for 5 years. My ID matches your records. The check is legitimate. I'd like to complete my transaction now." Hartwell shook his head. "I'm afraid I can't process this today. We'll need to hold the check for verification, which could take up to 10 business days." "10 days?" Eleanor asked. "That's not standard procedure for verified customers." "It is when we have concerns," Hartwell insisted. "Perhaps you'd like to try depositing a smaller amount today." The suggestion that she didn't have access to the money shown on the check was the final straw. "Mr. Hartwell," Eleanor said, her voice firm but controlled, "I'd like to speak with your regional manager." Hartwell smiled slightly. "Our regional manager only meets with our premium clients by appointment. I'm the highest authority available today." Eleanor took a deep breath. She hadn't wanted to do this. She preferred to be treated like any other customer. But Hartwell had made that impossible. "In that case," she said, reaching for her business card holder, "perhaps this information will help you understand who you're speaking with." She placed a business card on the counter and slid it toward Hartwell. Richard Hartwell picked up the business card from the counter. His eyes moved across the embossed lettering. The bank had gone completely silent. Even the clicking of computer keyboards had stopped. "Eleanor Williams," he read aloud, then his voice faltered. "President and CEO, Heritage Community Bank." The color drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Eleanor watched his reaction calmly. She hadn't wanted to use her position this way, but Hartwell had left her no choice. Behind her, several customers whispered to each other. One woman covered her mouth to hide a smile. "Heritage Community, that's the new bank that's been growing so fast," James Sullivan, the teller, said quietly. He had read about Heritage in banking magazines. Hartwell's face was now turning red. He knew exactly who she was. Heritage Community Bank had opened 6 branches in 3 years and was taking customers from traditional banks like First National. Their focus on serving minority communities and providing fair loans had earned them attention in the banking world. And he had just treated the owner of this successful bank like a potential criminal. "Ms. Williams," he finally managed to say, "I had no idea." "Clearly," Eleanor replied. Her voice remained professional, but her eyes were firm. "Now, about my deposit?" Hartwell nodded quickly. "Of course, right away. James, please process Ms. Williams' check immediately." He tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Please accept my apologies for the inconvenience." James took the check and began processing it, his fingers moving quickly across his keyboard. "It wasn't inconvenient, Mr. Hartwell," Eleanor said. "It was discriminatory." The word hung in the air. No one spoke. A few customers nodded in agreement. I was just following security protocols," Hartwell stammered, "for large deposits." "I've been in banking for 15 years, Eleanor interrupted. "I know the protocols. What you did went far beyond standard verification." An older black man in line spoke up. "She's right. I deposited a check for my boat sale last month. It was for $85,000. You didn't question me like this, and I'm not even a regular customer." Hartwell's eyes darted around the bank. More customers were watching now, and 2 of his employees looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Williams, perhaps we could discuss this in my office?" he suggested, not wanting the scene to continue in public. Eleanor shook her head. "That won't be necessary. I just want my check deposited, which is what I came here for." James finished the transaction and handed Eleanor her receipt. "Your deposit has been processed, Ms. Williams. The funds will be available tomorrow." "Thank you, James," she said with a genuine smile. As Eleanor turned to leave, she noticed a young black woman behind the other teller counter. The woman had been watching the entire exchange, and there was both admiration and sadness in her eyes. Eleanor recognized that look. It was the same one she had worn many times early in her career. "Mr. Hartwell," Eleanor said, turning back, "I'll be in touch about this incident. Not to cause trouble, but because I believe we have an opportunity here." Hartwell looked confused. "An opportunity?" "Yes. These situations happen every day to people who don't own banks. People who can't prove their worth with a business card." She looked around at the diverse customers watching. Banking should be about trust and service, for everyone. With that, Eleanor walked toward the door. As she reached it, the rain outside had stopped and sunlight streamed through the windows. Several customers and employees watched her go, knowing they had witnessed something important. A moment when someone had stood up against an everyday injustice and created the possibility for change. By afternoon, everyone at First National Bank's downtown branch knew what had happened. Richard Hartwell stayed in his office with the door closed, making phone calls. The employees whispered among themselves whenever customers weren't around. "Did you see his face when he read her card?" One teller asked another. James Sullivan, who had witnessed the whole thing, felt bad about his role in the incident. He had been the one to call Hartwell over after all. During his lunch break, he searched online for information about Eleanor Williams and Heritage Community Bank. What he found impressed him. Articles described how Heritage had provided loans to small businesses that other banks had rejected. Those businesses were now thriving. The bank offered financial education programs and fair mortgage rates in neighborhoods that traditional banks avoided. Meanwhile, across town at Heritage Community Bank's main office, Eleanor sat in her corner office, looking out at the city. She hadn't planned to tell anyone about what happened, but her assistant had noticed something was wrong. "It's nothing," Eleanor said at first. "With respect, Ms. Williams, I've worked with you for 3 years. I know when something's bothering you." Eleanor sighed and told her what had happened. 20 minutes later, her assistant returned with Marcus Johnson, the bank's legal counsel and one of Eleanor's original investors. "You should file a formal complaint," Marcus said after hearing the story. "This kind of discrimination happens every day." Eleanor shook her head. "Filing a complaint won't change anything. We need something bigger." Before she could explain further, her phone rang. It was a reporter from the Atlanta Business Journal. "Ms. Williams, we've heard about an incident at First National Bank this morning. Would you care to comment?" Eleanor was surprised. "How did you hear about that?" "A customer who witnessed it contacted us. They said it was a clear case of racial profiling in banking." By evening, the story had spread to local news stations. People began sharing similar experiences on social media. #BankingWhileBlack started trending as people across the country told stories of being questioned, delayed, or denied services at banks because of their race. The next morning, First National Bank CEO, Thomas Wilson, called Eleanor personally. "Ms. Williams, I want to apologize for what happened. Mr. Hartwell's actions don't reflect our bank's values." "Don't they?" Eleanor asked. "This isn't about one manager, Mr. Wilson. It's about a system that sees black customers as suspicious." There was silence on the line. "We're prepared to offer a formal apology and ensure Mr. Hartwell is properly disciplined," Wilson finally said. "Firing one person won't solve the problem," Eleanor replied, "but I have a different proposal. Let's meet tomorrow to discuss it." After she hung up, Eleanor received another unexpected call. It was from Tanya Morris, a black employee at First National who had been working when the incident occurred. "Ms. Williams, you don't know me, but I saw what happened yesterday. I've worked at First National for 5 years, and I've watched this happen so many times. Customers who look like us get treated differently." "Why are you telling me this, Tanya?" Eleanor asked gently. "Because I've been afraid to speak up, but seeing you stand your ground yesterday, it gave me courage. There are 4 other black employees at different branches who feel the same way. We want to help make changes." Eleanor thought for a moment. "Can you all meet me this evening?" By nightfall, Eleanor sat in a conference room with 5 First National employees. Each shared stories of discrimination they had witnessed or experienced. Each expressed frustration at feeling powerless to stop it. "You're not powerless," Eleanor told them. "Together, we can turn this incident into a chance for real change, not just at First National, but across the banking industry." For the first time since the incident, Eleanor smiled. What had started as a humiliating experience was becoming something unexpected, an opportunity to address a problem much bigger than one bank manager's bias. The conference room on the top floor of First National Bank's headquarters was filled with tension. On one side of the large table sat Thomas Wilson, CEO of First National, along with 4 executive board members and their legal counsel. On the other side sat Eleanor Williams, alone but confident. "Thank you for meeting with me," Eleanor began. "I appreciate your willingness to discuss this situation." Wilson nodded stiffly. His legal team had advised settling the matter quickly and quietly. The last thing First National needed was bad publicity about racial discrimination. "We want to apologize again for Mr. Hartwell's behavior," Wilson said. "He has been suspended pending further review." Eleanor placed a folder on the table. "Mr. Wilson, I'm not here to demand Mr. Hartwell's job. I'm here to show you something more important." She opened the folder and pulled out several papers with charts and numbers. "These are statistics about banking services in minority communities across our city." The executives leaned forward. curious despite themselves. This first chart shows loan approval rates by neighborhood. As you can see, predominantly black neighborhoods have approval rates 40% lower than white neighborhoods with similar income levels. Wilson frowned. Ms. Williams, if you're suggesting our bank has discriminatory lending practices. I'm not suggesting anything, Eleanor interrupted calmly. I'm showing you data, and First National isn't the only bank with these patterns. The banking industry as a whole has a problem. She placed another document on the table. This is my proposal. For the next 20 minutes, Eleanor outlined her plan. Instead of a lawsuit or public campaign against First National, she proposed a partnership. Heritage Community Bank would work with First National to develop comprehensive training on unconscious bias for all employees. Together, they would create community investment initiatives in underserved neighborhoods. They would establish a committee of diverse employees to review banking policies. Why would you want to partner with us after what happened? One executive asked. Eleanor smiled. Because real change doesn't come from punishment. It comes from education and collaboration. The room was quiet as the executives considered her proposal. This would be unusual, Wilson finally said. So was refusing to deposit a check from the owner of another bank, Eleanor replied. Sometimes unusual situations create unusual opportunities. After more discussion, Wilson called for a brief recess. When the executives returned, Wilson extended his hand to Eleanor. Ms. Williams, we accept your proposal. First National Bank would be honored to partner with Heritage Community Bank on these initiatives. That evening, Eleanor met with Tanya Morris and the other First National employees who had reached out to her. They sat in Heritage's conference room, surrounded by takeout food containers as Eleanor explained the agreement. You mean they actually agreed to all of it? Tanya asked, amazed. Eleanor nodded. They did. And I want all of you to be part of the committee that oversees these changes. What about Mr. Hartwell? James Sullivan asked. He had joined the group after reaching out to Eleanor with his own apology. That's the most interesting part, Eleanor said. I specifically requested that he not be fired. The room erupted with questions. Eleanor raised her hand. Hear me out. Firing him would just send him to another bank with the same biases. Instead, I asked that he lead the community investment team, working directly with the neighborhoods and people he's been avoiding. Tanya laughed. He's going to hate that. Maybe at first, Eleanor agreed. But people can change when they're given the chance to see things differently. As the meeting continued, Eleanor watched these employees from a competing bank share ideas with her team. They were excited, engaged, and hopeful. This was so much more valuable than any apology or punishment could have been. What had started as a moment of humiliation was becoming a movement for change. Eleanor knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time, she felt like the banking world might actually be ready to address its long-standing problems with race and equality. 3 years had passed since that rainy Tuesday morning when Eleanor Williams had walked into First National Bank. Now, on a sunny spring day, she stood on a stage next to Richard Hartwell. Behind them, a new building gleamed in the sunlight. A large sign read Community Financial Education Center, a partnership of Heritage and First National Banks. This center represents what can happen when we work together instead of against each other, Eleanor said to the crowd of people gathered for the opening ceremony. 3 years ago, I never would have imagined standing here with Mr. Hartwell as partners. She looked at Hartwell, who nodded. He had changed in many ways since their first meeting. After joining the community investment team as part of Eleanor's agreement with First National, he had initially been uncomfortable and defensive. But as he spent time in neighborhoods he had never visited before, talking with people he had never listened to before, something changed. I want to say a few words, Hartwell said, stepping to the microphone. 3 years ago, I made a mistake that could have ended my career. I judged someone based on appearance, not character. I'm grateful that Ms. Williams saw an opportunity for education instead of punishment. He turned to Eleanor. You could have demanded my job. Instead, you gave me a chance to learn and grow. Thank you. The crowd applauded as Eleanor and Hartwell cut the ribbon to open the new center. Inside, community members would receive free classes on financial planning, home buying, starting small businesses, and building good credit. After the ceremony, Eleanor walked through the center. She stopped to chat with Tanya Morris, would left First National to become Heritage Bank's Director of Community Outreach. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Tanya asked, gesturing around the busy center. Eleanor shook her head. Never, but that's the thing about difficult moments. They can lead to unexpected opportunities. The partnership between Heritage and First National had grown beyond the original agreement. The bias training program they developed together had been adopted by 15 other banks across the country. Their joint community investment fund had helped finance over 200 small businesses in underserved neighborhoods. Most importantly, the banking industry was slowly changing. When the American Banking Association created its first task force on racial equity in financial services, they asked Eleanor to lead it. Banking magazines and websites regularly featured stories about the Heritage First National model of community banking. As Eleanor prepared to leave, James Sullivan approached her. He had also left First National, but not to join Heritage. Instead, he had started his own financial education company, teaching high school students about banking, credit, and investments. My students are coming for a tour tomorrow, he told Eleanor. Many of them had never been inside a bank before. Bring them to my office too, Eleanor said. I'd love to meet them. On her drive back to Heritage's headquarters, Eleanor thought about her journey. From the little girl doing math at her kitchen table, to the young professional facing discrimination, to the bank CEO making real change happen, it had been quite a path. Her phone rang. It was her father. I just saw the news about the center opening, he said. Your mother and I are so proud. Thanks, Dad, Eleanor replied. I still remember what you told me years ago. That money is just a tool. And you're using it to build something that will last, he finished. Later that afternoon, Eleanor sat in her office looking at a framed newspaper article on her wall. The headline read, Bank Incident Leads to Industry-Wide Changes. Beside it hung the simple wooden plaque her mother had given her when she first bought the bank. Heritage Community Bank, banking for all. What had started as a moment of discrimination had become a movement for change. Sometimes, Eleanor thought, the most painful experiences could lead to the most powerful transformations, not just for one person, but for an entire community.